Everybody has their thing they're good at. Be good at what you're good at and let other people help you with the things you're not.
That was Nicole Barker, and this is episode number 195 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey there, how are you doing today? I am so glad you joined me. I'm Marley McMillan. I'm with the blog Namely Marley, and I am your host here at the Chopped Podcast, where we are talking about a lot of things, including entrepreneurism, productivity, mindset, social media, and even some technical things like SEO. All of this as it relates to a passion for food blogging and influencing. Today, we're talking a little bit on the technical side because we're talking about your Pinterest strategy. I just checked my analytics, and as of this moment, my site is getting over 100,000 page views a month from Pinterest. That's pretty exciting for me, and I'm really pleased with those results. But my results have not always been this great, and there's been a lot of things changing these days with Pinterest, which makes it feel kind of complicated at times. That's why I asked Nicole Barker to join me for today's discussion. Many of you have probably already heard of Nicole before. She runs a VA service that helps bloggers with their Pinterest strategies, and she works with quite a few very successful food bloggers. That's one of the reasons why I imagine you might have heard of her before. In fact, she mentions that one of her clients is getting over 300,000 page views a week from Pinterest. Well, that always keeps things in perspective, doesn't it? I mean, I think I'm doing great at 100,000 page views a month. And then you hear of somebody who's getting 300,000 page views a week. But you know what? I don't find that discouraging. I think it's actually extremely encouraging. It's like this for me. If I don't even know it's a possibility, how can I achieve it? I mean, I guess I can imagine accidentally stumbling into it, but having it feel a little more purposeful is always a good thing. And knowing that there are other food bloggers out there killing it like this, I don't know, it makes me feel inspired in a way that I can do that as well. I may have told you this story before, I can't remember, but if I have, then it probably bears repeating anyway. But last year, I was taking a walk and I was listening to some podcasts, and I heard a food blogger describe how she was getting 25,000 page views a day. And I stopped in the middle of my walk and I hit rewind. 25,000 a day? I couldn't believe my ears, but yes, that is exactly what she said. I paused for a moment to take all that in as I was walking. But then I did the math. 25,000 page views a day, that's 750,000 page views a month. And that's a goal of mine. So if 25,000 a day sounds kind of ridiculous, I may never achieve that goal of 750,000 a month. Obviously, you can accidentally hit a goal, in other words, not on purpose. But for me, I always feel like if I can't see it, then it's harder for me to achieve it. And I think it's just another example of why it's so important to break down these big, hairy, audacious goals that we have. I think if you can, if breaking it down helps you see it as a reality in your day-to-day processes, it will help you reach those bigger goals as well. That's one reason I love this discussion with Nicole today. She's sharing some great strategies on how to improve your Pinterest game. It means understanding your Pinterest audience. And part of that is just recognizing that the people drawn to you on Pinterest may not be the same as the people who are drawn to your blog on a day-to-day basis. And that's okay. It just means that you need to know who they are and what they're expecting and to deliver more of what they want to see. So Nicole talks about that, and she also mentions that it's important to keep your eyes on your Pinterest account. It's so funny. I think there should be a t-shirt like this, but it's so easy to compare ourselves to these bigger bloggers, but they may be doing things differently. So if you see them and you count and you realize, oh, they're pinning 45 pins a day, if I pin 45 pins a day, I'll be successful like them. Well, it doesn't always work that way. In fact, in general, it doesn't work that way at all. And Nicole mentions that every Pinterest account is different. And so your followers on Pinterest will be different than mine and will be different from somebody else's. And I think Nicole can speak to that from experience because she has nearly 200 clients that she works with. So she's able to see that on a daily basis, see that actually play out. So if you're interested in an overhaul or even just some simple tweaks to your Pinterest strategies, you are going to love today's discussion. I know Pinterest is constantly changing and it can be so confusing at times, but this is the best advice to get your 2020 game on. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured discussion with Nicole Barker. Hey everyone, I'm so excited to have on the show today Nicole Barker. She's with Nicole Barker Virtual Assistant Services. Hey Nicole, welcome to the Top Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have you. I just love talking about Pinterest and trying to like figure out what's working and what's not. And I think we're going to go into all of that today. So I'm excited.
Yay.
Yeah. So I thought it might be interesting for people if they could hear a little bit from you about what it is that caused you to create your VA services business.
Yeah, actually, I think it's always such a funny story. But I moved into a little town in Alabama, and in my neighborhood happened to be this blogger. And I didn't really even know blogging was a thing at the time. This was, 3 or 4 years ago. And this blogger came to me and said, and she's actually a fairly large, well known blogger. And she said, I need some help with Pinterest. If I teach you how I do it, can you manage my Pinterest? She was just busy. So I said, sure. So from there, then she added a friend. They had another friend. And then I decided I wanted to dig in because I loved it. The analytics behind it, I'm an analytically driven person. And so, I decided I wanted to dig in and find out more how I could make this an actual business, how I could make things grow for people, not just follow like, oh, I'm just going to pin whatever they tell me. I wanted to grow businesses. So that happened about, I think it's been 3.5, 4 years now.
Wow. And what caused her to reach out to you? Were you friends?
Yeah, we happened to be friends. We'd go on these nightly walks, walking my dog, and she was just so maxed. And I'm like, I would love to. And I've always been an entrepreneur. And so she gave me the idea. I'm like, yes. And so, now it's a fairly large business. We've got 172 clients. So it's grown a lot.
How many employees do you have?
We've got 15.
Wow. Can you imagine 3 years ago you were, what were you working full time at the time?
I wasn't. So I was a stay-at-home mom. We just moved to Alabama. I've always had a job of some sorts, but it's definitely different. But I love it. This is the best thing I could have done.
Wow. I mean, how amazing is that to have, just have a friend reach out and say something to you like that. And the next thing you know, it's turned into a business for you.
I know, right? And it's a busy business. And, it's great because it allows me to be a mom still, that I can run up to the school and not have to take time off of work with a boss. But
yes,
I love it.
I love that too. And then once you get the kids down, you can go back to work if you need to or whatever. You've got that flexibility. Yes.
Yes. It's every morning and then during the day. And then as soon as kids go back to bed, then I'm back at it. And so it's a lot of work. It's great.
Well, and when I hear you say I'm really busy, I think there's so many aspects to this because not only are you probably, busy taking on new clients or getting to know the clients that you have currently better and penning for them, but you're also like learning what's because Pinterest, it feels like it's constantly changing. So you're constantly learning.
Oh gosh, it's an ever-changing platform. I don't know that I can say that enough to people, that even what we talk about today could be totally different tomorrow, right? Like things just change.
I know. It sometimes makes me hesitate to talk about what I'm doing, but at the same point, we have to start somewhere. We have to have some strategy, I think. Otherwise, we're just kind of, flailing in the wind, and that's no fun.
I agree. And I think that the things, that there are basic things that everybody can be doing that's not going to change.
Ah, that's good to know. And do you do anything besides Pinterest, or is Pinterest mainly the focus of your business?
We have a few clients that we do Facebook for. But I found that, focusing on Pinterest was where I was going to provide the best value for my clients. And so I'm pretty heavily focused there.
Ah, that's great. Okay. So no need to name any names here, but I'm just curious, I know that you work with a lot of really big bloggers, and I know you probably work with some who are newer. Do you enjoy, I don't know, the variety of working with such a different clientele?
Yeah. So, as far as food bloggers, we probably have out of the 170-ish clients that we have, 130 of them are probably food bloggers. And we've had people that literally didn't have a Pinterest account yet. And so we would help them start up a Pinterest account, to the clients that, have a very established, they're very large bloggers. And I enjoy it all. I think that every blogger's created equal, right? But it's really fun to be able to see every different stage grow and change and adapt to it.
Well, and that just makes me so happy to think about, like, if you start with somebody who doesn't have Pinterest at all, and then you get them going right and get them, I just can't imagine how happy they must be to work with you to get that kind of traffic.
Yeah, I think it's, it's fun, and it's fun for me. Like I said, I like numbers. That's my thing. And so to be able to see like, oh my gosh, we started with 0. Now we're at, this. And it's really fun to get to see those peaks with new clients.
I love that. And, okay, so everybody talks about the huge amount of traffic that Pinterest can have. And I sometimes wonder if people if they are new to Pinterest, or if they're not seeing those kinds of numbers, they might wonder, are people just making this up? I mean, I know for myself, I'm getting anywhere from 30 to 50,000 page views a month from Pinterest. Pinterest. And I was hoping without naming any names, if you could talk about some of the numbers, some of the engagement that you're seeing with some of the people that you're working with.
Oh yeah, I think that I think many people are even open about the kind of page sessions and all that they get. Some of them,
True.
in a week span, I know one specific, and actually, I think they've even been on your podcast. Those sweet
Ah,
people, but they had around 300,000 in 1 week page
a
sessions.
week?
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you,
Wow.
they did not start there, but in about a year's growth, they are there now. And so they definitely started more towards like the 10,000 to 30,000 a week, maybe if they were
Uh-huh.
lucky. And now to be up at 300,000, that's a lot, right? That's a great,
That's
mhm.
huge.
Yeah,
Yes. I mean, if you think about having ad revenue on your site, that can really transform your bottom line.
right, for sure.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. And if you start out with somebody who's getting, 10 to 30,000 page views a month, and then you're able to increase that to 300,000 page views, that's amazing. I love it.
Right. And that's 300,000 a week. That's in a week
Wow.
span. That's not a month. That's a week.
You know what I love about this? Because okay, so let me just be real with you, Nicole. It's easy to kind of get into a flow and a rhythm, and I'm thinking 30 to 50,000 page views a month. I'm really happy with that.
Right.
And then I realized, okay, I got to get my game on.
Yeah. Now I got to step up a little bit.
Yes. It's good to have role models. It's good to have goals. I'm a very goal focused person, so I love having goals. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love it.
Yes. Okay. I love that you talk about analytics. I wonder, do you recommend that food bloggers should be regularly going into analytics? And if so, where should we be focusing on that?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. I think you need to be in your Google Analytics often.
Okay.
Often, and seeing what's happening, not focusing on, okay, from yesterday to today, what has changed, because that's not a good way to look at it. Really, it's this year over year idea,
Yes.
because there's a trend to your account, your followers, the people that are engaging with your blog are doing the same things every year. So they may be at Christmas off doing skiing for the same week every year. They may during the summer be super busy with kids where they're not able to get onto your blog. And so you need to be mindful that there are going to be some ebb and flows, but they should, follow year over year. So I like that when you go into analytics from last year, I recommend looking at these year over year, but look at like the next 30 days year over year. What trended last year? What did your people like? What were they engaging with? If it was an overall consensus of soups, maybe you want to go in and you want to focus on soups for the next 30 days or whatever, and really see if you can drive that traffic back to your recipes that are soups. As far as the other side, I suggest looking in Tailwind. I really like Tailwind Analytics. I look at the boards a lot, like what's your most repinned boards, because that says this is what your users are engaging with. So I like to focus on those two heavily. There is Pinterest Analytics, and I like those, but I personally take the look at Google Analytics and Tailwind.
And Tailwind can tell you a lot. They can show you the pins that are getting most repinned and the boards. I love that. That's really helpful.
For sure. All of those things are great.
If you see a board that's getting repinned a lot, do you want to then start pinning to that board?
I don't know necessarily about just pinning to that
Okay. Okay.
board, but
Yes.
that should drive your creative side. So if you see that you're getting a lot of pins to a board, then you should create pins for that board. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So rather
Mhm.
than just repinning something that's already out there, maybe starting with something fresh and put to that board.
Exactly.
That's very good. And as far as analytics is concerned, it sounds to me like what I'm hearing you say is that, maybe when we first get into analytics, we're looking at the top numbers, but you're talking about going into the actual Pinterest numbers, which is under, I believe, referrals,
Mhm.
and clicking on that and just, and seeing what pins are doing really well too.
Yes. And so, yep, for me, I don't look at every once in a while I'll look at your overall, but I focus on just Pinterest, right? Because that's
Yes.
what I'm dealing with for the clients. And so if you are talking about just looking at your Pinterest, I would go in and say, if you're looking at your Pinterest strategy, go in and say, what was trending last year on Pinterest for me? What did my followers on Pinterest like? Because your followers on Pinterest may not be the same as who's actually looking at your blog on a daily basis. It may be different. And so try to get those followers on Pinterest engaged and clicking through.
I love that. That's so helpful. I think if people can just do those two things alone, focus on Google Analytics and the Pinterest side of things, and and Tailwind. I think those two things will kind of give you a better understanding of who's following your content and how you can create better content for that audience.
Absolutely.
I also liked what you said though too, because it sounds like you had a forward-looking thought frame there too, where you can imagine what's going to be popular on Pinterest. And that's, would I be like looking at March last year, and like if we're in March right now, or maybe April last year to see what was doing well?
Yeah, so I actually, I think that you should look at March and April together. So if I were to go in to a client and I'm saying like, what do we need to do? Like, are we starting to, lose a little momentum here? Let's go back to last year. What was happening? These pins were your trending pins from last year for March and April. Let's get some new pins. Let's get this going. Let's try to breathe life into your old posts that you've already put all this effort into. Let's try to get some new pins and, get people back to those posts. And clearly this was good last year, so it's going to be good. I mean, hopefully it's good this year as well.
Oh, I really love this because it kind of helps me create a strategy for how to move forward. Because I think it's so easy to get kind of in the now. And like maybe now I'm publishing things for Easter or whatever, but maybe I should have been publishing that 3 weeks ago, right? Like it's hard to forward think, I think sometimes. So looking at analytics for last year, a month or two ahead of time, can help me decide what I should be pinning now.
Yes. And I think you want to be mindful that you are that you always have a strategy and that
Yeah.
you are pinning things, speaking to this Easter or whatever, that it's 30 to 60 days before the holiday, before the season. You want to be about that 30 to 60 days mark on Pinterest. So that's why you do have to be forward thinking. You do have to have a strategy. It can't be last minute on February 13th. Oh, I want to put up a Valentine's recipe because it's not going to get any traction until next year. Maybe next year that'll help you. But this year, it's not going to do it.
Right, right. And another thing I wanted to ask you about when we're talking about analytics, I think it's easy for people to worry about the total number of followers that they have, but it seems like engagement is actually a better way to determine how robust your Pinterest account is. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think followers, those followers are great because that means that they liked you, they wanted to click the follow link, they want to engage with you. But the
Right.
actual engagement says, hey, I'm liking what you're putting out there and I'm engaging with your stuff this week. I'm engaging with your stuff right now, your pins, your account. I'm engaging with you. And so I personally would focus more on engagement than I would followers if those were the two I was choosing from.
Okay, I love that. And we were talking about trends and things that how to plan our Pinterest. I noticed that Pinterest, either they have introduced or they're in the process of introducing a new tool called Pinterest Trends. Do you know about that tool and how we can use that?
Yeah, so it's a brand new thing. It's not offered to everybody. It's still in early access. But it is a cool tool. It's one where you can say, okay, what's trending right now is kind of the way that I'm reading it. And let's say you were looking for chicken soup. So you can type in the search term chicken, and then it'll kind of start to pull up all of the highest trending topics for chicken. So then you can even go even closer to chicken soup. You can go further down to chicken soup with noodles. You can really scale it down and say, is this trending? I think it also kind of helped me a little bit with keywords, with helping to decide how to title some things when we're creating pins. And so I actually really like this Pinterest Trends. I think it can help spark you to look at your, again, to be forward thinking and look at what you're going to be creating.
I love that. And I love what you're saying about the descriptions and the titles that we create for pins, because Pinterest is basically its own search engine, right? So we
Yeah.
should be thinking about keywords as we're writing all that.
Oh, for sure. Keywords are so important right now. And if you don't have the right keywords in place, or if you don't have keywords in place and you have a lot of fluff words and not keywords, your pin's not going to be searchable. And that's the overall game, right? Is to be searchable
Yes.
on this search engine.
Yes. And when I was working with you, that's one thing that you pointed out for me is on my board descriptions is that I had, you were very kind. You didn't say I had a lot of fluff words, but you just pointed out that if I added more keywords and added more engaging words, engaging language in the board description, that the board would do better.
Yes. Well, now even Pinterest is attaching your background SEO based on those board descriptions. And so, I like that boards are really dialed in. They're a little bit more niched down than than they used to be, maybe than just a broad board. They're a little bit more
Yes.
focused. And the board description then helps those pins in that board get the background SEO.
Interesting. That's the first I've heard of that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So you dial in a little bit more on the description of your boards, and that actually helps the pins on that board do better too.
Yeah, it helps them to be searchable. It helps. So if you put a chicken pin into a chicken board and it has a really good description that's, got a lot of keywords in it, then that pin's getting background SEO on it attached.
I love that. That's great. Okay, so I'd like to talk with you about things that we're seeing in 2020. And I know you work with so many accounts. So the wonderful thing about that is that you kind of get to look at the data and see these things are doing really well and maybe not these things. Do you have any things that kind of stick out in your mind as things that we should be focusing on in 2020?
Yeah, the thing that's the new buzz, and I think that you'll hear that a lot right now, but is new pin creation. If you are not doing new pin creation, you're just going to miss the mark on Pinterest. And so again, a new pin equals a new image or a different image. And so you can, have something kind of similar, but it needs to be a different image, a different title, a different description, but it can all come from the same post. And so that's easily accomplished, I think, with going back to old pins and just, again, breathing new life into those older pins, or creating whole new content obviously is going to be great as well, a whole new post. But I think that's where everybody needs to put their focus right now. Again, making sure your keywords are important. But this is a visual search engine. And so you want to make sure that you've got those new posts going out so that they are getting some traction to them.
So an example I can give is that I used to just get a ton of traffic from my chocolate covered peanut butter balls, and I just had that one pin. It was a tall pin, and every many months I would go in and I reshare it to some of the same groups. Even that was my strategy. I think a lot of people had that strategy. It was just taking that same pin and see what was doing well and repinning that pin. And now what I'm doing instead is I'm taking that post. I know it has opportunity to do really well, but it's not doing well anymore. And so I can just, take the same shots. Even I throw them into Canva, those same images, and I just play around with them and create different graphics around them and reshare those.
Yeah. And I think that, in my strategy, at least, and, everybody has their own, but in our strategy, I don't say you let that old post just die either. I don't think you don't ever not reshare that. If that's proper English, probably not.
I get it though.
But I think you should share that post still, the older pin that was trending well. I would say still share that within Pinterest guidelines and, the spamming policy. But then also create a new pin that you can also continue to share. And so that's why we say create multiple pins for one post, because you can continue to share those down the road.
Oh, that's great. And so, okay, when I first got into this and was starting to finally understand it, I mean, I've seen some people who say they'll create like 10 pins for this one. Well, I started doing that. But then I was just dumping them all on Pinterest at the same time. And it seems like a better strategy might be, if you're going to go ahead and create those 10 different images, or, even 5 is probably a great number. To save those in a file and share them slowly over Pinterest. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think that Pinterest created a great thing, that pin create, which is that little red plus button on your Pinterest account. You can create the pin and then you just upload it, and then you can schedule it on the day that you want it to go out. And so that's the way that we always recommend to our clients, is to go in and create more than one pin for a post. Live pin your first one to your blog board, and then the other ones you should put up into that pin create to pin on subsequent days.
That is awesome. I didn't know about pin create. Wow, yeah. That's great.
Yeah, that's and you can do the same thing in Tailwind. You can, schedule it through Tailwind and lock the pin so it goes out on a specific day. But I definitely always say, think of the end user in this idea. Does the end user, if they're scrolling through your page and they see back to back to back 10 posts of the same thing, yes, are they just probably going to click off and go somewhere else? Or if you spread that out in the span of however many weeks and it kind of comes out gradually, do they keep seeing it and go, oh yeah, I like that. And ooh, okay, I want to click that now. And okay, I think that helps the end user experience.
Oh, I completely agree, because it does feel fresh and new that way. Yes. It's a different look on the same thing, but yes.
Right.
So that's interesting because, in my mind, when I schedule a new pin, my first thought is I want to also I use Tailwind's feature of what is it called where you schedule one of that same pin to different boards over a period of days.
So that is it sad that it's going to slip my mind on what
Oh
that is?
no. What was
Why
that
can I,
called? I
it's
can't
right on
think.
the tip of my tongue. But yes, interval. That's what I think you're
Intervals,
talking
right?
about.
Yeah, interval.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's been my strategy. Every time I publish a new pin, I schedule. I use interval and I schedule it to a bunch of different boards. Is that still the goal, or is it just putting it on one board is good enough?
Oh, no, I think you definitely want to schedule it out to multiple boards, right? Because that's
Okay.
just another way to re advertise your pin. But you
Yes.
just don't want it all to go out on the same day. You don't want it to all go out even all in the same week. Like you want to take this time and make it a strategy that works for you. Is there a set time? Is there a set amount of, you should make 5 pins with this? There's none of that. It needs to be a strategy for your account. Every account's going to be different. And so I never will give hard numbers on that. But you definitely want to space this out so that you can help that pin to get as much traction as you can for a long amount of time. And, I think you do want to pin it to more than one board. It's just, again, another way to be able to re-advertise that pin.
Okay, so I have another idea I want to run by you, but now that we're just kind of brainstorming stuff.
Yeah.
So Tailwind lets you create categories of boards. And I have some of those, like that way I could just pin it to one category and I use interval and it schedules it out to the different boards in that category. Do you know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about?
Yes.
So I wonder if a person could create category 1, 2, 3, 4 of different boards that obviously they have to be relevant. Like you couldn't, if it's a dessert, you wouldn't want to publish it to a board that's called savory. So you'd have to work this all out. But so that you would know that, I've just created 4 images for this one post and I'm going to schedule this first image to group A and the second image to group B. That way I'm not duplicating boards. Would that be a smart plan to have?
I think that would be totally fine. I'm of the mindset, I think that does work. If you are more of a like, okay, I need to just get in there and set it and forget it, right?
Yes.
I'm a little bit more of the mindset of being actively involved in your account.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
good point.
I don't, recommend to my clients, and of course we do it for them, but, so they go and they live pin one pin and then the rest of the pins, then we take and we share them out to boards weekly. And so I suggest being in your account at least weekly to, set up sharing a schedule. Thank you. Sorry. To set up a schedule and make sure that everything's doing, because you want to make sure you're staying on trend and all that. So, if you set this up and let's say you did a soup recipe today and it takes 2 months for that to go out. Well, let's say next month, it's a crazy hot month, right?
Yes.
All over the United States, wherever your traffic is, let's say those are crazy. Well, that pin's not going to do good then. And so you don't
Right.
necessarily want to share it that month. Does that make sense?
Yes,
And so I would
absolutely.
suggest just making sure that you are mindful that you're actively engaged with your Pinterest account if you are going to do something like that.
Okay, so it's easy to kind of want to create some set it and forget it plan and strategy. But what I'm hearing you say is we just need to get in the habit of being more active and getting in there on the regular and knowing what's doing well and what's not and just
Yes,
being
what's
hands on.
trending and what's not, and because that's
Yes.
going to change, of course.
It sounds to me like what if we want to set it and forget it, we should probably just hire you
I mean, maybe.
because you do all that stuff, right?
Yes.
I love that. So, do you have recommendations? Like I told you, I think I've seen some people who say they're creating 10. Do you have any like kind of gut feeling of is 5 a good number or how many pins should we be creating for each blog post that we want to do well?
Yeah, so we're saying to our clients, like for every new post you're creating, at least create 2. That's easy, right? In
Yeah.
almost every one, especially for food bloggers, because you have, the starting picture, you have an end picture, you usually have more than one end beautiful picture. And so you can create more than one post. So at least create more than one. Don't just create one and think, okay, I'm done. I think that you just are short selling yourself that way.
Yes.
And so create at least 2. And I don't think that it can go wrong to create more, but I would be mindful that if you are creating more, that they are completely different images outside of those 2. Don't just try to change the text overlay because I think that that'll just become way too repetitive and Pinterest will catch on to that before
Mm.
too long.
Right, exactly. So the options could be, rather than just changing the text, is that you could create a collage. That's very popular where there's
Mhm.
two images, or maybe you have two different angles of that recipe, just different things like that to kind of mix it up.
Yes, or maybe you have the beginning part where you have all of the ingredients together, or you have it in the pan, and then you have one where it's plated. I mean, I'm
Yes.
sure as bloggers that you have, or food bloggers especially, that you have many different times that you can be video or that you can be taking a photograph, and I'm sure you do.
Yes. So what do you recommend for old posts? So, I mean, the thing I like about this is like I have a bunch of old posts that, basically I need to reshoot them because the images are all landscape and they're, small or whatever. But I love being able to take those old images, put them into Canva, and I can I can use it as a collage photo and, really zoom in on that photo and brighten it up a little bit. And it does really well.
Yes, so that's exactly what I think everybody should be doing is go back to your old stuff and I mean, yes, I think you can take the time to reshoot it and make it a prettier picture because what you did 4 years ago probably isn't as good as what you do today because we're all growing, right? We're all
Right.
getting better. And so that's fine. But if you don't have time, because not everybody does to do every single one of those, you'd run out of, hours in the day. But
Yeah.
go back and just create a collage, duplicate photo, where there's two, one on top, one on bottom. Do something different with it, and that will allow it to, account for a new pin.
I love that. Okay, so let's say we've got these 4 or 5 new images for an old pin. Is it okay if the text is the same on all 4 of those pins, or do we need to kind of mix up the text as well?
Yeah. So, what constitutes a new pin is a different image, a different description, and a different title. So, you have to have those three things for it to be considered a new pin. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
if it just is a chicken soup and you just continually put chicken soup, that's not going to work. So maybe this is a chicken noodle soup. Maybe this is a chicken,
Yes.
however, you guys are more creative than me in that sense.
Well, I could see like if it was brownies, you could say chocolate brownies or brownies with walnuts or gooey brownies, or I guess as long as there's just something different. I mean, obviously you're gonna have to have the word brownies every time, but you're
Yes.
mixing up. Okay.
You're just giving it, but it needs to be different. It couldn't be just chocolate brownies and then another one chocolate brownies and another one chocolate brownies. It needs to be different.
Okay, that's good to know. It's so easy to get in those habits. Like you say, it's kind of, we get in that get it and forget it mode. At least I do because I got so many things on my list of things to do. So it's okay. It's a
Yep.
good reminder just to take a few minutes and make sure we write those titles and the pin descriptions with intentionality and purpose and knowledge.
Yep.
Yes.
I
I
agree.
love that. Okay, so one of the things that I do, let's say I'm pinning something, I actually open up a second Pinterest tab and I will search for that. So if we're talking about chocolate brownies, I will I'll open up a second window and I search for chocolate brownies because then all those little tabs that show up at the top, I feel like those are keywords and I try to somehow put those keywords into the description. Is that a good habit?
I mean, I think that's great. Those are the most searched keywords when you type in at the top and then it pulls up those additional ones. Those
Yes.
are good trending topics. And so, yes, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, excellent. Good. I'm glad to know doing something right.
You are on track.
Yay. Okay, what about hashtags? Because I feel like I've heard people talk about, yeah, we have to have them. And now I've heard people say maybe we don't. Do we need to use hashtags in the descriptions?
Ah, so hashtags are hard, right?
Ah,
Because
yes.
to hashtag or not,
Yes.
I would say that right now we are still, I hear the same thing and I have not gotten I don't have the exact clear answer. I will say I'm still telling my clients to do 2 to 3 hashtags on the descriptions. Make sure in your board descriptions, those are not for hashtags. On the description of the pins, that's where you put your hashtags. Do not put them in the board description.
I see. Okay. So some people might have gotten so far as to put hashtags in their board descriptions. Don't do that there. Go ahead and put 2 or 3 in the pin itself. Okay.
In the pin itself, yes.
Yes. And stick to like somebody gave me the tip of using my own hashtag. So on every single pin I have hashtag namely Marley for sure. And
Mhm.
then I try to do 1 or 2 that are relevant to that topic.
I like that. I heard there was controversy about that, but I
Really?
personally, because it affected stolen pins, so somebody could go in and look at namely Marley, right? And
Uh-huh.
there's all of your pins, and they could steal them fairly easy that way.
Oh, that's
Um,
terrible.
Oh, I know. That stuff makes me angry. But
Me too.
I still do like that you are able to look at all of your pins by a hashtag. And if somebody wanted to find you, they could find you quickly that way. And so I still like it, but there's some controversy around that
Yes.
is hard to, not look at as well.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the number of pins per day because I feel like that's something else that I've seen is changing, which I'll tell you what, I'm kind of glad about it because I mean, I've talked to several people who sounds like they pin upwards to 75 to 100 pins a day. I mean, I can't even imagine, but I'm probably more in the 40 to 50 pins a day, or maybe probably closer to 40 to be honest. But I feel like I'm hearing that those maybe the number can even go down to like 20 to 30. Do you think that's true?
Yeah. So this was, every time a new video comes out from Pinterest or Tailwind or anybody, you
Yeah.
know, anybody, there's always chatter that goes around. And so there has not been a very specific number. So there's not a hard fast number. I think it depends on your account. And so if you are creating new pins all the time, you have a large amount of pins that you have as your own personal pins, then yes, I think you can be upwards of 35 to 40. I wouldn't ever go above 45. In my opinion, we've always been below 45, and I like that. And we find, the sweet spot for each one of our clients. But if you are not creating a lot of pins, you're a newer blogger, you do not have tons of content out there, I would recommend going, lower around that 25 ish range. I know that some people were going down to 15, and to me, that just doesn't seem like enough. But again, each account's going to be a little different. And so you have
Right.
to find what works for your account personally. Don't look at somebody and say, this person who gets 300,000 views a day or whatever it is, they're doing 45, so I'm going to do 45. You have to do it for your account. Each account is unique.
It's so easy to get into that trap where we think, oh, well, they're doing this, so I should do that as well. In reality, they have a ton of content to draw from.
Right. And their followers, they're not creating the exact same pin. No one Pinterest account is going to be created the same ever. And so they may be creating stuff for their followers that's, again, that's maybe a heavy soup. They love soups. They're big, where somebody else may not like soups. They may be more of a sandwich followers,
Yes,
and so
right.
everybody is so different that you have to be mindful of your Pinterest account. Keep your eyes on your Pinterest account, I think, is what's a very big important thing.
That would be a great t-shirt, wouldn't it?
Right? Keep your eyes on your Pinterest account.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I mean, and because it's true, because if I happen to know somebody's doing really well on Pinterest, and I go and I look at their feed, and I think, okay, this is what they're doing, I should do that too. And there's just too many unknowns that I don't know what's going on. Like you say, maybe they're only focusing on certain boards or certain topics, or maybe their pins have a kind of a branded look that does really well for them. So it's just impossible, I think, to to replicate somebody else's strategy.
Exactly. But I do think, in the same breath, I think that it's great to collaborate with people, to talk what's working for you and what's working for this person and what's working for this person, and draw from everybody. Take a little piece of everybody and see what then works for you and put that into your own. I don't think just head down only looking at what you're doing is the way to do it either. I think you have to draw from other people as well. So I know that that's kind of backpedaling a little bit, but you do have to keep your eyes on your own Pinterest account. But it's okay to hear what other people are doing and see, does that apply to me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense to me. I mean, I'm always talking about tennis because I play tennis a lot. And so it's like I can go out and practice, but if I'm not practicing right, that doesn't help me either. Right. So it's like, yes, you have to listen to experts who know what they're doing, or people who have been successful and know what have, had a strategy that's worked for them. And then, like you say, take away from that. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is if you have less content, you might be, it's okay to do, the 20 to 25 pins a day. If you have more content to draw from and you're able to create fresh pins with that, you can go ahead and stick with a higher number, maybe between 40 and 50 a day, and that's going to be okay.
Yep. And again, we don't go above 45, but I would, Tailwind installed a new spam
Yes.
guard. And I
Uh-huh.
actually, at first, I thought, oh my gosh, like, oh, another thing that I have to try to figure out. But I actually kind of like it. I think it helps my bloggers and my clients or, anybody to look and go, okay, I don't want to be spam like. So I can't have 75 going out. And I don't want to overdo this because that's maybe I'm putting in too much effort and am I really getting the return on it?
Yeah.
And so I think it keeps you in this kind of happy balance. And so I think their spam filter kind of puts you at, or spam guard puts you right around 41, if I remember right. Like
Okay.
above 41, they kind of give you this like alert, like, oh my gosh, you're doing too much. And so,
Oh, okay.
again, we're about, nobody's above 45 with us. And I wouldn't really recommend going above that.
So that makes me think like I'm in part of a lot of group boards, and oftentimes let's say I'm coming out with a new post today, it's coleslaw, and I've got 4 or 5 different pins or whatever that, or let's say you said two, so let's say two, and I'm going to share those to all these group boards I'm in. But if I have a lot of content like I do, and I'm also trying to stick with this 40 to 45 limit per day, it means to me that maybe I still share that to multiple boards, but maybe not as many of those boards. I don't have to share them all my boards.
Yeah, so I think that you need to be mindful of group boards and what group board's working for you, which one's not, which one's sharing your content, which one's not, which one's actually getting repins. So that's the first thing with group boards. As far as within that, sharing what you're sharing of your content, maybe even versus what you're sharing of other people's content, we're still doing this 50-50, and we find that it works. So we share about 50% of our clients' contents, and 50% of others. And so you have to be mindful that you don't just, again, do that big push to every one of your group boards. You want to keep this pin going for a long time. And if it doesn't get to every one of your group boards within the season, I don't think that matters. I think you need to look and say, what are my primary group boards? Which ones are working for me? Which ones do I want to actively be a part of? And dial your strategy in that way.
Oh, this is so helpful, Nicole, because I mean, I'm in over, I probably, I don't know how many I'm in. I won't give a number, but I'm in a lot of group boards, but I don't know that I've ever actually gone to look, like some of them I just habitually repin to. I mean, I schedule through interval.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that they may have good numbers. Like, let's say they have 40,000 followers of that group board, but I'm pretty sure there's a few of those that are not even active anymore. I know that because when I went there, my pin was the only one there for several weeks. So that must mean that no, it's not very active.
Right. And you do. So the best way to do that is to go back into Tailwind to look and say, okay, how many pins went to this board in the span of 30 days? How many pins went to this group board? How many pins were repinned? And then you can go in and you can analyze further and say, okay, out of that month, yes, it had this many pins, this many repins. I pinned 50, let's say. How many pins of mine actually were repinned then? And if you're not getting any repins in a whole 30-day period and you pinned 50 pins to that board, which probably is unlikely that you pinned 50 pins to one group
Right.
board, but
Right.
however many it is, if you're not getting repins, that's maybe not the board for you. It's maybe not sharing your content. They're not active, or you're just not doing well on that board. So then focus it somewhere else.
Would you actually consider like removing yourself from that board?
We archive boards actually quite a bit right now. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Just group
So,
boards. So we don't with personal boards. Personal boards, we keep going and you can repurpose them. There's a whole bunch of things you can do with personal boards. But with group boards, it's totally fine to archive it if it's not working for you.
oh, that's so smart, because if it's not working for you, then it's really not, you think you're doing something for yourself by repinning it to that board, but it's not helping actually.
No, it's not. If it's not giving you any return, then you're putting in a lot of effort and not getting anything back out of it.
Ah, that's so good. I love that. And I mean, one thing I've done since working with you is like I've started this kind of strategy of creating more personal boards that are relevant to topics that I would be repinning to. So for example, with me, my site's vegan. So I created a vegan meal prep board and a vegan keto board and things like that, those are things that I create content and I can share to those boards.
Yes. And that's what you should have is so you get to control your personal account, right? You get to
Yes.
control all of your personal boards. Those are all controlled by you. And so that's where I would put more of my energy on the things I can control. Maybe it's because I'm a control freak. I don't know. But in my opinion, I think that you can control those boards. You're going to put good quality content. You know that it's going to, appeal to your followers because you know what they like. They clearly are following you for a reason. So it's appealing to them. It's all of that. So that's why I focus so heavily on personal boards and less on group boards. And I think that that's the big push right now with Pinterest. And that's why they've kind of downgraded group boards as much as they have.
I see. So I may actually, when I go in and finally do this research as you've told me to do, I may discover that there are many of the group boards that I'm participating in that are not getting repinned. So you're right. The better strategy would be then to repin to my own boards or whatever boards I find are being effective.
Correct.
Great. This is great. That alone, I think, is a very actionable step that we can do to, then I'd be pinning fewer pins, but they would be more effective, which is what I want.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's it. Is you want whatever you're putting out, you want there to be a return, right? That's just
Yes.
this is a business. And so if you're putting stuff out, you want there to be a return. So if you're doing all of this work and putting 100 pins out and you're only getting 2 repins, what did you really gain from that? Where if you take and you scale this down and you do quality content, you do quality pins, you're putting out quality stuff and you're getting a bigger return, that's more worth it. So,
well, Nicole, I have to confess, there is this part of me that feels very accomplished by doing tasks.
yeah.
But like there's like, it's like the crossing off the list of something I had to do. So I can say, oh, I repinned that, so I'm done. But now I'm hearing you say, no, that's not good enough.
No, maybe, but I'm a list checker offer, right? Like I always want to check it off my list, but
Yes.
I definitely say make sure that it's worth your while.
Yes, that's a very good. That's another T-shirt I need. Make sure that the effort is worth your while.
I mean, let's go on the t-shirt making business next.
That's going to be my next project. I'm sure of it. That is so good. Okay, so I wanted to get back to something you said earlier, which is the ratios. So I do hear different people talk about, pitting your own content versus others, but you're saying it's effective. You're seeing effectiveness by doing a 50-50 ratio. It's interesting.
We are. And I know that so again, you have to put your eyes on your own account. So maybe that's not working for these few that are saying that they're not pinning other people's content. But when I look at it, I want to go into a Pinterest account and read it like a beautiful magazine. And if I see the same stuff over and over and over, I am not going to follow it. I'm going to go, yep, next. But if I can see that, okay, this page has this, and then you turn the page of the magazine and it's got more beautiful stuff and it's from other people. So unless you have tons and tons of content that's great content, which I just don't know that I know very many people that can really accomplish that well, I think that you should do this 50-50 ratio. I see it still working and it's working well.
Oh, I could think of some accounts that I have followed and I just love going to their feed and just seeing what they're pinning because it's gorgeous stuff. And I'm thinking of people like Jessica with How Sweet Eats. She always pins. It's beautifully curated. It's gorgeous. So yeah, I mean, I can see your point that being that purposeful about your own pins. And if that means your content isn't always beautiful, that means like repinning some other, whatever you want your pin to look like. Maybe it's more practical or whatever, but I get that. That's really good advice.
And remember, you're drawing people into your account. So if somebody comes in and they go, oh, this is great. And look at all these great, if it again was a chicken soup board, look at all these great chicken noodle soup recipes or these great chicken soup recipes.
Yes.
But you only have 4 chicken soup. It's okay if it's mixed in those and they're seeing all of these great pins that sound so great, but they're drawn to that board because they've got so many great recipes. Where if you only have 4, you might not catch the eye of a lot more people. Does that, I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
I might be reaching, but I think that makes sense.
No, I think that makes sense totally. So let's talk just for a minute about how you track all this, because this is a lot. And do you just use things like Tailwind, or do you have spreadsheets that you use to help track what you're doing too?
Oh, well, we use spreadsheets like crazy just because we've got, they're my clients. I do think if you're an individual blogger, I think you can track it through Tailwind. Tailwind has such great tracking tools.
Yes.
And so I think you can track through Tailwind. You can see even when you've pinned pins to boards, there's so many things through Tailwind that you can do. I think that some people can get so caught up into, I've seen bloggers who have tried to manage it themselves and they get very caught up in a spreadsheet instead of the actual what's happening and what should I be doing. And so I wouldn't get too, I don't know. I think there's got to be a really good balance there for some people because I just have seen it go wrong.
Well, and there's so many variables to track. Like if you're using a spreadsheet to track the effectiveness of a single pen, it might be the time of year. It could be the boards that you chose to repen it to. There's just so many variables it's hard to track, I think.
Yep. And so I would more be focused on doing that through Tailwind than I would like trying to keep some spreadsheet that you've like checking off all the boxes, because I don't think that a strategy should just have an automatic check all the boxes. I think that a strategy should be ever changing for what you're doing with your account.
Yes. Okay. I love that. Okay. So I like to ask people this question, and I'm actually for you, I'm going to change it up a little bit because I like to ask people, if you knew somebody who was starting a food blog tomorrow and they wanted some advice from you, I would wonder if you could talk about advice you would give to a new food blogger, but also based on, because I feel like you work with a lot of successful food bloggers, some of the things that you see the most successful food bloggers doing.
Yeah. So I I think that's such a funny question because again, I hadn't heard of blogging before. I knew that I used Pinterest, but I didn't really understand this blogging idea. And when this lady who taught me it, she started showing me all of these. I mean, it was like my eyes were open. I'm like, oh, I want to be a blogger. Oh my gosh, look at all that you can get. And it's amazing and fabulous. And and then she showed me the background of it. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not just as easy as slapping something up there. There's a lot of work that you all do. And I can't do it. That's why I do Pinterest, because it's a hard thing. And I commend each one of you and think you're crazy smart people out there.
And hardworking. Yeah.
It is. But I think if you do it, then make sure that you are a detailed person and that you understand that there's many platforms. So there's, Google search, there's Pinterest, there's, just writing a good blog, taking good pictures. There's so many things that go into all that you do. And I would say, make sure that you figure out what you're going to do best and focus on that, and then let other people help you with the things that you are not going to do best at. So I think trying to do it all at 100%, that you're never going to be great at any of it. But if you focus on the one thing that you're going to be great at, whether that's blog writing, picture taking, whatever it is, then sub out the other stuff. That's really what I think will make somebody successful. On the flip side, these few bloggers that I work with that I think are successful, they do just that. But they are bigger, and I know that not everybody can afford to do it all. So you have to put in the hard work in the beginning. I get that. But they all have people that work for them, and they delegate the tasks that they know that is not their primary best thing, if that all makes sense.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And it kind of reminds me of the book by Gay Hendricks, and I'm not going to be able to think of the name of it right now, but he talks about your zone of genius, and you should stick, you may have other areas, like you may be really competent at it, but that doesn't mean that that's your area of genius. Your genius may be recipe testing. So get in the kitchen and do the recipe testing, and then have people that do the other things for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, if you ever got one of my newsletters, I don't know if I was doing them when, back then, but I am not a writer. I mean, I always think, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. After I read it back, I think that sounded like a second grader wrote it. That's so not my bag. It's just, I'm not good at it, but I can go in and you give me analytics and you give me numbers, and I can give you a strategy, and I can help you through all of that. And so everybody has their thing they're good at. Be good at what you're good at, and let other people help you with the things you're not.
That's brilliant. I love that right there. Okay, Nicole, I have these fun questions I like to ask at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me, these are food bloggers. They want to know more about you. So what's your favorite food?
So my favorite food is Mexican food. And actually the funny thing in my house is my husband is our cook, and he's a fabulous cook. And so I take all these recipes and I'm like, hey, can you make this? And he makes all of them. But I love food in general, but Mexican food's probably my favorite.
I love it. You're working with like 150 food bloggers. So you see all these great recipes. You're like, make this for me.
I've gained a lot of weight since I started this business.
Tell me about it. You're around food all day long. I mean, you're looking at food. How can you not be hungry all the time?
I'm staring at it going, and at 10 o'clock every day, I'm like, God dang, I got to eat lunch. It's 10 o'clock.
Yes. I'm with you. I love Mexican food too. Is there like a favorite part? Like, is it guacamole? What is it? That's your favorite?
Yes, I'm a guacamole fan. Isn't that funny? But yes, guacamole is my thing.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
And I grew
Yes.
up this person who I was super finicky. The idea of eating something green, I did not even try guacamole till I was like 25 or something. I just like, no, I'm not touching that, but I love it.
Oh, I love it.
How can something green taste that good?
And it's amazing.
It is. It makes everything better, I think. Okay, what's the favorite app on your phone?
So the favorite app, I actually play Candy Crush. That's the thing. It's a game, and
Yes.
I play that as a way to just turn my mind off. And so I know that seems so silly and so
No,
like, really, that's what you do. But I play that when I just need a moment of like, whew, okay, I've got to stop and I've got to like refocus. I play Candy Crush.
it's
Is
like your
that not funny?
meditation.
I always feel so
I love
embarrassed
it.
because my kids are like, "You are amazing at Candy Crush, Mom." I'm like, I know. It's
I love
kind of
it. That's
embarrassing.
great. That's perfect. I think having a game like that kind of, you get to turn your thinking brain off and just do is
Yes,
kind of good. It's really good.
it is.
Okay. Do you have time? You sound so busy. I can't even imagine, but do you have time for TV or reading at all? And if you do, what's your favorite?
I definitely read. I like any true stories. I'm a bath reader, so I take a bath and read a book.
Ooh, do you have one of those bath things that like goes across the bathtub?
No, I don't have that. I just sit in there and I mean, I don't know. I love a good bath and a good book, but
It must be a hard copy book then, right? Like you're
yeah, for sure.
okay.
And I mean, anything that's like a true story that's, a little bit of the heart, like it's going to pull at the heartstrings. I love those.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
I also do reality junk TV. I love all the housewives. I mean, I always think that's embarrassing to admit, but I love it. It's my favorite.
Hey, you know what? You got to enjoy what you enjoy. It's entertainment. That's what it's about, right?
Right. And it's one of those ones you don't have to really get involved in. You just kind of watch it. And, so I don't get to do tons of it. There's just no time. But when I do, I watch
Yes.
that.
And sometimes you ever find like it's just nice to have something going on in the background while you're working or that kind of, do you ever like sit in front of the computer with Pinterest? Because that's what so many food bloggers do.
Yeah. Do it's funny. I can't have stuff. I used to be a good multitasker and now I'm not. So I can't have any noise going on anymore. I have to really focus in when I'm trying to do something very specific. So I don't
Oh,
have noise going on anymore.
that's good advice too. Okay. Nicole, I love working with you and I'm so glad that we had this time to talk and share with everybody about the services that you do. How can people find you if they're interested in working with you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's NicoleBarkerVA.com. I'm on Facebook too. I'd love, for anybody to reach out on that. But, the website I think is a great place to even just see some of the things that we offer.
Is it Nicole Barker VA on like things like Facebook as well?
Yep, it's both. Mm-hmm.
That's
On both the
great.
website and that. Mm-hmm.
Well, Nicole, I have had a great time talking with you. Thanks for taking the time to join me.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thanks to Nicole Barker for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you want to hear the latest in food blogging, including keeping up on every episode of this show, head to chopped.academy and hit subscribe today. You may be asking, Marley, what can I do to support the Chopped Podcast? Well, first of all, thank you for such a great question. The answer is simple. 1, you can subscribe to the Chopped Podcast on iTunes. 2, you can leave a review on iTunes. All you have to do is scroll down to the bottom of the feed and leave a review. And 3, you can share a screenshot of this episode on Instagram using #ChoppedPodcast or #NamelyMarley. It's that easy. Your support of the Chopped Podcast means so much and really helps the show get more new listeners every week. You inspire me, and I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.